Hello, this is the ramblings of an Undisciplined Mind podcast for Wednesday, April 27th, 2016. So I recently finished a book called before I launch into my thing, as of this recording, Sierra still missing. Alright, sorry. I just finished a book, I believe the author's name was Peter David, I think, called Apropos of Nothing. And this is a comedy fantasy, I guess you would say. But I found it really interesting. Now, it's not, if you've read some of the other comical fantasy works over the years, like Xanth by Piers Anthony, or Myth Adventures by Robert Asprin, this is not that. It's not that slapstick. It's not that silly. I mean, there are definite comic bits to it. But they're not, it's not like one pun after another going through it. The land is this made up land, and most of the names are fairly straightforward. There's this one area that's called the Flaming Nether Regions, that's kind of a humorous name. And the main character is this guy who is a child of rape from this woman that was working at a tavern, who then thereafter started working as a prostitute because I guess she assumed, well, I've already been deflowered, ravaged, whatever, I might as well at least make some money off of it. So she stays working in that same tavern, and the boy grows, and she names the boy Apropos. And he's got some problems because he's lame on one leg, so he can't really walk around very well by himself. And so he grows up, and he's got this friend that he's found, a guy by the name of Tacit, and Tacit teaches him some woodsmanship. They spend a lot of time out in this woods near the little town where he's at that's supposedly haunted, and they do some minor thievery and whatever. And then the mother gets killed. And Apropos decides to go on this journey to visit the king of the land to demand justice for his dead mother. And that kind of drives the plot of the rest of it. It is a little strange in that, he goes to the king's castle, and stuff happens there as far as the justice of the mother. He ends up getting offered a position as a squire, which is highly unusual because usually it is the young men of the noble houses that become squires, because it's kind of the apprenticeship for becoming a knight. So it's very, here you got, okay, he's a bastard child with a mother who's a prostitute. I mean, that he's going to become a knight sets a lot of people's teeth on edge. But the king, there's something about him that the king likes, and so he makes him a squire. And so that kind of it builds some inner tension for for Apropos because he hates knights. And the reason he hates knights is because it was a group of this king's knights that raped his mother. So, he knows that they aren't pure and all this stuff, and so, he's not really comfortable being among them, and especially having to be working with them and living in the same castle and things of that nature. Some of the stuff that really comes across as funny, so as knights will do, you've got, knights will say their name, and then they will say where they're from. And so, like, the funniest of these is the knight that actually Apropos gets assigned to, which is Sir Umbridge of the Flaming Nether Regions. And every time I saw that, it just made me chuckle. And Sir Umbridge is this guy that is, he's old and he's doddering, and he really isn't good for much. And so Apropos feels like not only is he already hindered because he's this illegitimate child of a prostitute, but now he's also got this complete wreck of an ancient knight that he's got to work with, and he's just kind of the laughing stock of the other squires, and he doesn't really like that. But they get assigned to go and pick up the princess. The princess has been, she was kind of wild, and the princess has been staying at basically like a convent for the majority of her time, at least as a teenager. And so, but now she's become a woman. It's time to bring her home. She's gonna be queen someday, and he's part of the party that goes and does that, and then stuff happens. So there are a lot of things that make it interesting. There is humor in it. I mean, it's not constant. And there's a lot of things that happen that are fairly dark. Like I mentioned, the circumstances of Apropos' birth. Some things that happen between Apropos and this best friend of his, which actually they end up interacting several times throughout the course of the book, can get rather dark. And there's lots of things that happen. It's not a light and airy book. It's not horrendously dark or anything, but it's, Apropos is an interesting character because he's not brave. He doesn't want to be brave. He's this guy that he's got pretty good upper body strength because he's had to, because he's got to make up for the lameness of his foot. But at the same time, he is lame. He can't really walk without leaning on a table, or most of the time he's got the staff that he carries around with him. So he is handicapped in that sense, that he can't run very well, if at all. He can't even move fast very well. To a limited extent, he can fight, but at the same time, he realizes that he's not doesn't have the mobility or whatever. Like, he couldn't take on a knight because they would just kill him. And in fact, that's one of the main reasons he doesn't go after to try to find the knight that killed his mother. It's a knight from a different organization that killed his mother, he knows. So, but he does harbor feelings of revenge for that he wants to get revenge, and that's why he goes to the king, because he realizes he can't do it himself. Throughout all of this, he does things that are heroic throughout the course of the book, but he doesn't do them from pure motives. He doesn't want to be heroic. He thinks it's stupid. And even the times where he kind of does it willingly, his inner self is like, you're being dumb now. You need to stop this. You need to run. You need to go the opposite direction, which was his original plan. But then something happened, and he kind of end up almost by default, against his will, ends up doing something heroic again and again and again. And that kind of reality, I kind of enjoy it. That, he wasn't your typical heroic character. He's not, and he's really kind of usurping the spot of the real heroic character in this book. I thought the best at one point, a character, the princess actually, she thought he was judging her silently, and she was like, "Don't judge me," and he's like, "I don't judge anybody," and she says, "You judge everybody and hold them in disdain, because first and foremost, you disdain yourself." And that was an excellent insight into this guy. I mean, I bet he's still likable. That's the magic that was done here. He's a likable character. He hates himself pretty well. He doesn't totally hate himself, but he hates his infirmities. He accepts the fact that he's a bit of an opportunist, and that he really doesn't have a heroic bone in his body, and that he can be selfish. So I guess the technical term would be he's kind of an anti-hero, because he's not really what you would consider to be the hero, but he's the main antagonist in this, or protagonist in the story. There are some really funny bits here and there, some nice quips. There was one joke, I swear to God, it was like in the last 25 pages maybe. And he threw this joke out there, and it kind of related into this naming convention he has for the different styles of magic that are in the world. And I'm like, I can just feel it. I don't know if it's the case or not, but I can just feel like the whole reason he gave that name to the magicians was to do this joke. And I even comment on that, but yeah, and it's kind of more of a pun groanster kind of thing. But so yeah, it's fun. It was a fun book. I will be. I've got a couple of library books out that I'm reading. That I'm going to read. I'm not reading them all right now. Just one book at a time. Thanks. Not counting my schoolwork reading. But we've got actually, because a friend has recommended these to the wife, and so when we were at this huge bookstore, she found book 1 and 3, and she bought those. We don't have book 2, so I gotta see if the library's got book 2. But I'm definitely gonna continue on with the series. It's definitely meant to be, there were a lot of things that got wrapped up, but there were some that didn't. I will say that for the most part, there were 2 kind of big reveals at the end. One of which I totally called in my head. And I'm not going to say what it is. I totally called it on my head. I will say, though, that he surprised me as far as timing. I thought that he would reveal that before a certain situation occurred. Before a certain activity took place. And he did not. He did it afterwards. Which surprised me a bit. The other revelation was also, is to be expected. I mean, it wasn't, but I didn't know who. As far as what that revelation was. So it was an enjoyable ending. It was he from a. And the thing is even though at the very end he does something and he sticks to his guns on doing this thing, and everybody thinks he's a jackass. The king thinks he's a jackass, and the princess thinks he's a jackass. But he is sticking to his guns, and the reason he did it was valid, was morally correct, and depending on how you want to look at it, yeah, you could even say heroic to take that stand and say, no, we can't do this, and I can't tell you why, or I'm not going to say why, because then that would hurt other people. So he does have some tendencies toward heroism. So yeah, like I say, it's a complex, interesting character, and I enjoyed it. But he at one point he's like, he worked the title in there, which I thought was cool, because you could just apropos of nothing, that kind of slams together. But at one point he was having words with the knight, and the knight kind of puffs up, I am Sir whatever of wherever he was from. It wasn't Sir Umber, it's the guy that he was working with. And apropos kind of puffs up himself and says, well, I am apropos of nothing. And I don't care, kind of thing. So it was cool. He got the title of it in there. Actually in a couple places. So that was cool. But yeah, if you like fantasy with a little bit of humor, it is definitely, I would say, a strong PG-13. There's language, there's some violence, there is some sex sprinkled in there. I mean, there's not like a hot and heavy sex scene. He doesn't go that far, but the character has sex. And you see the aftermath and all that once or twice. It's filled with a lot of people that there's really nobody 100% good, and there's really nobody 100% bad, and I think that's one of the things that makes it interesting. So yeah, Sir Apropos of Nothing, I think by Peter David, but probably if you search with that title, you should find it. I would recommend it. It was an interesting read. I'm looking forward to when I finish the books that I have from the library. That's going to be my next book, 3 books hence. So anyway, I am way over. I am going to let that be that for today. I will be back tomorrow. I'll be talking to you then. So, be seeing you.